Ndeyp.
Welcome back to our channel. Thank you for tuning in. Hopefully you stay. Don't click that button if you're thinking about switching to the next screen. You might want to hear what we have to say, right? I think so. It'll be beneficial.
Hopefully, God willing.
To God be the glory at the end of the day. Let's do it.
Let's do it.
I think I'm ready.
Okay.
I'll be your support team. I'll be there.
Welcome back to our channel. If you're new here, my name is Miriam.
My name is Harrison.
And we are the Double Field Set Free.
Yes, we are.
Like, comment, subscribe. Yeah, baby.
If you haven't watched part 1 to our birth story, I will leave a link down below and put a card somewhere here. This is a part 2 and it's a continuation of our birth story. Last video, he was very tired. He's still tired. Hopefully he's more alert. Yes. I mean, he was alert in that video, but you could tell that he was tired. He's still tired today, but we really wanted to get this birth story out. So, excuse his demeanor if you see that he's a bit exhausted. If you hear any hush noise in the background, unfortunately, we can't do anything about that. Our son is sleeping right in here. He has to have white noise.
White noise is the new normal.
White noise is our new normal, so he has to have white noise in order for him to stay awake, especially because we're going to be talking and recording this video. We don't want him to wake up.
And when he wakes up with vengeance.
Continuing the story, I last ended off on me pushing and being in the hands of, I know I called her a trainee in part 1, but as I was editing that video, I realized the proper term is an intern. The woman I was left in the hands of for laboring prior to being wheeled off to surgery was an intern. I still don't think that it was professional of the midwife though to leave me in the hands of an intern, but like I said in part 1, in retrospect, I was extremely grateful, and I believe that that was the hand of the Lord to provide a woman who was very compassionate and empathetic and wanted to make my experience as smooth as possible, and was actually pretty sorry for her counterpart's attitude and behavior and insistence on me stopping to pump my epidural when I was in pain. Anyways, I started pushing. This was getting closer to midnight. I think I started pushing at 11 when they came in and said, okay, let's get you started to push, even though the baby was not in a favorable station. And they say that I might have to push long because of that. We pushed in all kinds of positions. Like I say, this woman was she was God sent, and she really talked me into relaxation. She allowed us to play our worship music while I was pushing. She kept encouraging me and really just being so supportive, and whenever I was pushing, she was telling me I was doing a really great job, motivating me to continue to want to labor. Any position I recommended or I suggested based on my research that I wanted to do, she allowed me to do it. She even offered her staff to bring in a mirror so that I would see the process down there of what was going on. I was actually more embarrassed than anything. I had become so relaxed and comfortable thankfully because of this intern, that I started sharing with the staff that I feel really embarrassed. Like I was apologizing profusely. Like I kept apologizing.
Let's be real. The reason why she was apologized.
I was pooping a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
And because I was on epidural, I didn't even know I was pooping. And it's actually funny how I found out I was pooping because the nurse.
Wasn't my reaction? Wasn't it my reaction?
It was. The nurse.
I couldn't hold it back.
The nurse who wasn't so positive, she was in there. I will say though, she did her job. She did what was expected of her, but you could tell that she wasn't happy being there. I felt like she really had an attitude towards me. I don't know if I just wasn't the type of person she wanted to be around. I don't know. Anyone who knows me personally knows that the Lord's still working on me. when it comes to being vocal about a lot of things or being very expressive of my emotions, I think that I did my very best to control myself, mostly because I was in pain anyway. Ain't nobody got time for that when you're in pain, but I just didn't do what I normally would have done, which is to be vocal, be what some people might call, I don't want to call it petty, but to actually like insist on a change of a nurse or the call management. Like, that's usually what I would have done in my past. I truly believe that I did everything I could to try to be very considerate, very understanding, very kind, because I remember when I was writing my birth plan and writing prayer and preparing scripture for my birth, that I remember telling the Lord that I wanted to be a good representation of Christ. Even during labor, I didn't want to be mean. I didn't want to lash out at people because of pain or frustration. I remember writing that down, and I know that I was not yelling at anyone. I wasn't that Miriam on that occasion. Even in my postpartum, where I was basically not being treated okay, I was being neglected in my opinion. It's where I could have demanded a lot of things for the sake of my life. Actually, I didn't do that. I decided that I would leave everything in the hands of the Lord, and that God is a God who fights for us. I remember telling you that I was going to allow the Lord to be my lawyer, the Holy Spirit who intercedes for us, that he would be our advocate. It says that in the word. If something was going to be done wrong, whether through racial bias or just mistreatment of me, I wasn't going to try to play God in my situation and try to handle it, especially if I don't feel moved by the Holy Spirit to do it, but that the Holy Spirit will fight for me supernaturally. I wouldn't have to even say a thing. I know that in part 1, editing the video, looking back and actually being convicted by the Holy Spirit as I edited the video, that I'm still to respond, not react, but respond as a true believer and as a good representation of Christ. I will say that I was upset in the part 1 video, and I think you can tell that through the video. People who don't know me might think that I was having an attitude or whatever, but that was just me being upset. Now that I think about it, I told you guys in part 1, sitting down to film this birth story is actually the first time in months that I have thought back on my birth, because to me it was traumatic and I literally almost lost my life and my son's life. I'll talk about my postpartum challenges and the complications I face till today because of my traumatic labor. Part 1 was me. I'm sorry that I'm kind of detouring from the subject, but I really do want to explain myself. I do want to repent from that, but I also want people to understand where I was coming from. I had not thought about my birth in a long time. Every time I thought about my birth in the past, especially when it was still fresh, I would cry. I would become depressed. It's understandable. Even the doctor, when they saw me, it's understandable why I feel upset when I think about it, because of the consequences of my traumatic birth. It was my first time remembering it, and I was getting angry and upset because I was just reliving what I felt was like just not a great experience. I just wanted to put that out there because I do feel like the Lord really placed on my heart that I did show anger and frustration in that video. Holy Spirit.
You were just going through a lot of pain. Being the husband on the sideline, it was real hard to watch, and best thing I can do is just give it all to God and not panic and just be strong for both of us. Because the moment I start panicking and becoming so discombobulated to the point that I lose my cool, that will increase the stress level. So
yeah, because you had to step in when I was in postpartum recovery. But we'll get to that in a bit. I'm sorry that this video is probably becoming long-winded already. I wanted to put that out there and apologize if anyone felt like I was having an attitude or was not being a true representation of Christ. I do repent of that. So in this video, I'm going to try my very best to stay composed, even though I'm only human and I do have emotions. And this was, for me, this is my birth. It's my story, my truth. I did experience trauma during my delivery. Back to the story. I was pooping and I got to know that I was pooping because the nurse who was attending to me, came and cleaned. Like I said, she was actually really doing her job, and she was cleaning me up. She wasn't leaving me to just be stinking there. She was cleaning me up. She was doing her job. I think she was doing her job.
They basically said you pooping was a good sign.
Yeah, I knew that it's a possibility for you to poop. Now, when you're in epidural, you're numb from your waist down. You don't feel anything except for pressure when the baby's coming. So I didn't even know I was pooping, and how I got to know that is the nurse came to clean me up, and I thought she was just cleaning up the water that was coming from my uterus because I was in an upright position. And then I see my husband's face. I just look at him because I'm just thinking, oh, she's just doing regular cleaning. And then I look at my husband's face, and he just does. And then I look at him like, wait, what? Because my husband's so expressive. Like, I thought I was expressive, but he is so expressive. And I just saw him doing this. And I looked and I said, why are you making... Oh my gosh, am I pooping? And he said, it's okay, babe. You're an epidural. You don't know it. So instead of saying yes, you are, he gave it away. He said it indirectly. It's okay, babe. You're an epidural. You can't help it. You can't control yourself. And I said, oh my gosh, I'm pooping. She's cleaning my poop. She didn't. Her face. The nurse's face was very like, if it was me.
Rodeo before, this is regular.
Yeah, if it was me cleaning poop, you would see it on my face. Like,
that's why healthcare is not for you.
Healthcare people is. I won't say never because the Lord is the Lord, but healthcare is not for me. And I'll say this: my husband's in healthcare, so. Anyway, I started apologizing to this nurse, even though in my mind I felt like she wasn't treating me right. I'm a decent human being. That may be hard to believe from some people because, like I said, people who know me personally know that I don't sugarcoat stuff. I tell it like it is, but really it comes from a place of goodness. I apologize my way through life, something I'm still working on. Yeah. But anyway, I started apologizing to her. I'm like, I'm so sorry because you have to clean my boo-boo. Like, I'm so sorry. I actually thought that you were just like overly considerate, to be honest, because at that point in time you're in a very vulnerable state, and that is where everybody's supposed to be attending to every single need that you're. Yeah. And you're so bent on being so over, Yeah, I was just being so considerate because I just
over-considerate for something that you don't have no control over.
Yeah, I had no control over it, but I still
She's a sweetheart.
I just still felt the need to apologize. So throughout my pushing and seeing them clean, and especially when the mirror came out and I actually saw myself pooping, I just kept saying, I am so sorry. I'm just like, girl, you need to stop apologizing. They all, including the intern, says, actually, this is like break room conversation where we're like, yes, she was pooping, so she's doing the right thing, she's pushing the right way. Yes. So basically, poop is like a good thing. Poop. So the intern told me like, no, don't keep apologizing. Stop.
Put those logs out.
The nurse ended up saying, really you apologizing is actually like you apologizing is making you aware of what you're doing. It's like increasing the embarrassment. Just stop apologizing. This is very normal, and what we want to see you poop because it shows you're using the right muscles to push. Be nice. And
them on the other end just cleaning that stuff.
This nurse, because the intern was so nice to me, I think that, when you're kind in front of others, it kind of motivates them to be, or inspires them to be kind as well. So this nurse ended up like indulging in conversation that the intern was starting, and because the intern was treating me so well, so kindly, I believe that she got inspired to start treating me better, even though, her facial expression was still very much negative to me.
There's still a part of me thinking that's, how some people just have facial expressions on their head, on their face, and
I don't know, but
they don't really, when they're not really mad, it's just how they look.
She really was not like very keen on serving me. Based off the conversation she ended up jumping into when we were talking with the intern, this nurse ended up revealing that she had just had her baby, I think a couple of months ago. She had been in
At
the
the
same hospital, and she had actually been put on bed rest. So it made me think, maybe she has her own personal stuff going on, and that's why it's appearing to me as if she wasn't happy to be there.
I will say, for future reference, anybody that's working in healthcare, any job per se, you really have to keep whatever is going on at home. Vice versa.
It's not easy though, because
it's tough, but people feed off of your emotions. People feed off of your attitude. People feed off your emotions, and when you're there to go render a service, that person's serve the wall first and foremost, and you're supposed to give that person your all, and make them, especially when in such a vulnerable state, make them feel like they're the safest person there.
Yeah,
I'm just saying, just a side note.
The intern honestly turned the tables for me at the time where I felt like this is it. Like, I'm over this. My birth plan has gone out the window, and I'm faced with so many complications. The Lord used her and her kindness. And she wasn't even a believer, because we even talked about religion when she asked what type of music we're listening to. We told her we're gospel, we're listening to Christian music because we're Christians and all of that stuff. She could tell she wasn't a believer, but she was the kindest out of the whole team to me.
I think it's one of those situations where you have somebody that's fresh out of school, know all the ropes and want to do all the right things, but obviously learning about this and that situation until they're implementing every single thing that they're learning, compared to a person that done this thing already, been through this, and they will kind of breeze through certain things, certain protocols that this will go by. It's more like, okay, I've been through this, what's next, let's do it, whatever, compared to a person that's just hot out of school. So you come with fresh new knowledge, you want to do new things, you want to practice what you learned in school, you want to do this. And I have more of a drive to push harder when you come from school rather than when you've been.
Okay, so you're saying that the intern's attitude was because she's fresh out of school and she wants to be as successful as possible in this.
Yeah, like because you basically in a new field, you're trying new things, find where you fit. Because I know all of this stuff, empathy, and all these things they teach you in healthcare. When you come with dealing with people, we literally have classes. Yeah. Coming fresh out of school, you definitely more prone to put that to work. I mean, anybody comment below and tell me what's your opinion on the matter.
Well, let's hear what you guys have to say.
I'll continue on.
I believe that there were 2 angels at my birth. One was that intern, and the other one was in the operating room in the theater. So anyway, we push. I do everything I can, and I think I pushed for over an hour, and I was starting to get tired. You watch pushing videos, you only have so much time to rest before you have to start pushing, especially because my contractions were coming back to back. That meant that every contraction I had to be pushing. After over an hour of pushing and seeing my baby's head, I saw his head. When they brought the mirror, they're like, oh, we see his head. The intern was like, do you want to see? We can bring in a mirror. And I was like, oh yes. So I saw his head full of hair. He was literally by the door. He had already moved past my pelvic area and was literally at the entrance. But apparently, according to the medical staff, he just wasn't moving further after a certain point. He wasn't coming out.
Mind you, this is how many hours of labor?
It was 3 days of labor.
How many hours of pushing?
Over an hour.
I think it was more than that.
It was over an hour, probably close to 2 hours of me pushing. Hardly getting, He kept trying to encourage me, come on, try again. I tried everything. I know myself. I know that I have very low pain tolerance, but I braved it out for this labor. I braved it out with the pain, I braved it out with the pressure, I braved it out with the discomfort, and I braved it out with fatigue. I was tired, but I was pushing to a point where even the nurses had sit there and we're kind of starting to give up, but I would say, contractions coming, I'm going to push. So like, oh, you want to push? Push. They were taking a break from me on my behalf, and I was the one asking to keep pushing.
At this time, it was a fight or flight. It was a mother instinct that kicked into overdrive because the more time the baby's spent in there, more likely they were exposed to infection. So your motive was to get that baby out right now.
Well, no, it's not just about the infection. I was exhausted and my body had been laboring for 3 days. I was beat up out of pain.
I mean, hence the reason why she said, I want to get my baby out right now.
I ended up getting an infection.
Yeah, I know.
By the time we decided to have a cesarean performed, I had gotten an infection and I had tried to push, and apparently the baby was literally at the door, and I'm not kidding. I could see his hair. I realized that, oh my gosh, he has a lot of hair because his head was crowning. The medical staff then said, well, for the past 45 minutes that I'd been trying to push past the certain stage, baby wasn't moving anymore. I was pushing, but nothing was happening. The intern, this lovely lady, reassured me over and over again, it's not you, you're doing the right thing, you're pushing the right way, you're pooping, which is a sign that you're using the right muscles. I'm just not sure why baby's not moving past this point anymore. So she ended up having to, obviously because she didn't have authority yet, she's still an intern, had to now go and call that midwife who had left me in the hands of this intern and say, we need a decision because this is the situation. He comes back in the room with his negative energy yet again. I'm not making this up. Negative energy, and he's like, well, you've been pushing for a long time and you got infected. My body was starting to shake a little bit, and apparently that's normal when you get an infection because I had gotten an infection. Yeah, I started getting chills. And so even his demeanor, it's not, hey, you know, those same ways the intern. I don't know whether because he was male, men don't have as much sensitivity to women, or he had something else going on. He was just negative towards me. He literally said, it makes no sense for you to keep trying to push. I'm gonna go and talk to doctors and see what they recommend. He goes out and he's gone for a few minutes, comes back, whispers to the intern, I guess the decision. But according to him, the doctors he had asked recommended strongly that I go to get a C-section right away, an elected C-section. I think because of liability, they kept insisting that, oh no, it's an elected. Because I was like, oh, is it an emergency C-section? It's like, no, it's elected. They were like so quick to correct me on that. I think there's liability issues around what term you use with the C-section. I look at my husband at this point, as you guys can imagine, I'm defeated. The truth is I had lost some faith, even wondering like, God, are you still here? Like, are you still here with me? Because nothing went according to plan. Granted, you're sovereign, but I'm literally at risk of losing my life because the baby has gone past the pelvis. A cesarean is meant for babies that are still in the abdominal area. So that's where my baby is. He's crowned. I get on the phone with my mom. Well, I don't get on the phone with my mom. You end up getting on the phone with my mom when you stay behind to prepare for coming to surgery. You didn't come along with me. I was wheeled separately and then they escorted you once you had cleaned yourself up. You were defeated, and even my mom says that you sounded really defeated on the phone and you just didn't know what to do.
Before she got wheeled off, the other nurses were trying last options and different things to get
the nurses did try.
The nurses were definitely trying every single thing.
Before I got wheeled off, they said, I'm so sorry, we really tried everything. And the nurse, I was surprised because, like I said, she had changed her demeanor. I don't know whether because the intern was present or whatever, but she had changed. Maybe she'd been inspired by the kindness of the intern to be kind to me. And so she even said, hey, we really want you to deliver this vaginally. We're going to try everything. Everything I requested, they tried. They made their own suggestion. They even went and got an older nurse because older people know what to do with these things. Even my mom, she said that if she was there, I would not have been willed to C-section. My mom's had 11 babies, okay? All natural, at home, not at the hospital. She's very much experienced in this area, and she kept saying She kept saying they weren't supposed to take you to C-section. The baby had crowned. And even my aunt, the nurse, she said the same thing when I told her my birth story, that, oh, they really shouldn't have taken you to C-section. They should have kept on trying because the baby had crowned. They got the older nurse who came and tried old wives' way of trying to get the baby out, but nothing worked according to them. The midwife had to be called, and he made the executive decision that, well, he highly recommended that I go and have an elective C-section. Being that I had already been infected for a while now, they had been putting me on medication for the infection while I was pushing. And so in my head, I'm just like, I'm not trying to risk the life of our baby. And I've done everything I could to stick to my plan, but God had other plans, and I'm just going to trust him. At this point, I was filled with fear, if I'm going to be honest, because once again, here I am being willed to major surgery to deliver a baby that's already past the pelvis. Because in my head, I was like, how are they going to get him out? At the same time, if I say no to a C-section, the baby has crowned. Where would they take me? Because I'm exhausted. I'm also too exhausted to continue pushing right now. I'd have to take a break and sleep. That means sleeping with the baby like in the passageway. It just didn't make sense. So I was like calculating all these things. I was just like, I don't have a choice. I don't have a choice but to go to the theater and have a cesarean, a repeat cesarean. I get wheeled away. At this point, I am crying. And my shaking is worsening. By the time I get in there, everything's a blur. I was angry. I was angry at everyone around me because their lives were going on as normal. Like, you know, the nurses are having conversations while prepping me for surgery. And I almost feel like, can you all be mourning with me and stop having conversations like it's a normal day? But of course for them it's a normal day, you know, they do this all the time. I was really upset. I was crying because there's nothing else I could do. Of course, I get sit on the table, they put the catheter, the worst thing for me, and surgery starts. I don't recall when you walked into the room. I just know that you were there by my side at some point.
They'll cut it into you.
And then they started performing surgery. Now, the part that becomes traumatic is how my body was handled in order to deliver this baby. I have reason to believe that the team at this point believed that somebody was not going to make it, and they just wanted to get the baby out. And I felt my body being banged on the operating table. Like, even though I was numb, I felt my body. And the anesthesia nurse, who was the second angel in my opinion that the Lord sent to help comfort me during this time, when that woman was around me, talking to me, soothing me, calming me down, that's when I was reminded of the presence of God. Because at some point I felt like God wasn't here anymore. How can he be here when things are going this way? And literally I'm facing life or death at this point. They're banging my body so hard on the table, and I feel it. This nurse kept saying, oh, you're about to feel more pressure. They're just going to try to get the baby out. You're going to feel a lot of pressure. And I knew that's when my body is being banged on the table. So because the baby had gone past the pelvis, they had to push the baby back up to the tummy so they could do the cesarean the usual way.
During that time, I was literally holding her hands, praying, and I was looking at the surgeons, and just to see their face was. It was a face of, we don't know. It was kind of like a very sticky situation. They don't know how the outcome's gonna come out. So at that point in time, I was just holding on to Jesus' promise and praying for protection and that He see us through it. There was nothing else I could do, but I know that she was gonna make it. You know, just looking at their face, at the same time, I had to maintain my calmness. I had to maintain, you know, my cool, just to be strong for her and me. But it was a very, very tough period, especially when I saw her. She was shaking and she complained of not breathing.
When they were banging my body, I didn't understand. I wouldn't get to know the magnitude of the damage until my postpartum visit. I would not know. I didn't know what was going on. I just knew that my body was being banged on the table so hard. And I was shaking and I was crying. I felt my body being banged a lot. That's all I really remember. And me shaking so vigorously, so violently, in my opinion. And of course they have you strapped when you're in C-section, so I guess that helped to keep me strapped. And this lady who was the anesthesia nurse in the operating room, I didn't even notice when the baby had been taken out, because I just kept crying and focusing on the fact that I was shaking so hard. And they say that that was because of the infection. I don't remember the baby being pulled out. I don't remember that part, but I think you then went to the station where they had the baby, and I think it was one of the doctors or the nurses, somebody came to me and said, "We're bringing the baby, we just need to clean him out because he got blood in his lungs." And I said, okay.
He was sucking his lungs with the tube. I saw them carrying him to the baby station to clear him up, and they they redirected me to the baby, and the baby was crying a lot.
Yeah, well, while he was at the station with the baby, this nurse was trying to calm me because they said that, oh, it's gonna be a while before I can have skin to skin with the baby, because they need to clean his lungs out and suck out blood from his lungs that had gotten in there. And so she's trying to keep me calm, and she's having conversation with me. It turned out she was Christian, and that I reminded her of a girl in Kenya that she sponsors, she said, and she pulled out her phone and started showing me pictures, and she also showed me pictures of her own children. She started asking me what language I spoke, if I had more children. Then in my peripheral mind, I heard my husband singing, "Jesus loves you, yes, you know, for the Bible tells me so. Little ones to Him belong.
That's a song I used to
They
sing
are
to
weak, but He is strong." Nurse heard that song, and that's how she knew that we were Christian, I suppose, because she said, "Oh, I love that song. Your husband's singing that song. I love that song." That's how the conversation continued, and she continued to calm me. She said, "The baby's gonna come soon," and I said, "Okay." At this point, my husband's away from me, attending to the baby at the baby station.
I was between two
I stopped
walls.
feeling breathless. I'm struggling to breathe. And I start calling for my husband because, again, I've done research. I know the reality. I'm filled with fear because I feel like I'm going to die on the operating table. I cannot breathe. At this point, they're now stitching me back. I know this because the anesthesia nurse tells me, "Oh, they're stitching you back now." And so I start calling for my husband, "Babe, I cannot breathe. And he's trying to pay attention to the baby because he's been wheeled to another station and there's stuff going on there. And so he keeps looking back, and I said, I can't breathe. And then I think at some point, because I kept calling him, I can't breathe, I can't breathe. At some point he said, she's saying she cannot breathe. And then I think one of the nurses said, it's okay, she's breathing. In my mind, I'm like,
according to the heart monitor.
According to the heart monitor, they say the heart monitor is showing that she's breathing. That's the side effect of one of the medications they gave me. I think one of the pain meds or steroids or something. And they say that's one of the side effects. It makes you feel like you cannot breathe, but you're breathing. And I say, well, this can't be true because I'm not breathing. I kept saying, I can't breathe. I couldn't even talk. I can't breathe. In my mind, I'm thinking, well, I can't breathe. I don't know. I don't care what the monitor's saying. I'm struggling to get breath into my lungs. And eventually, I think they took the meds, that medication off, and then I started breathing normally. But it took a while, and my husband kept looking back because I kept calling for him. I was like, no one else is listening to me. My husband's going to have to advocate for me. I cannot breathe. That was really frustrating on its own. They finished cleaning me up, and then the pain started coming. So the anesthesia nurse now dismisses herself and says, it was nice talking to you. I'm going to make sure, because I let her know that at the very same hospital I had a C-section, and last time they didn't give me enough pain meds. I struggled in the postpartum recovery room. And so through my conversation with her, I let her know, please make sure that I have enough pain meds when I'm in the recovery room. And she said, yes, I'm going to make sure I write that down for the doctor.
She followed up on all of it.
Yes, this lovely lady, she tried to stay and tag along with me until I was wheeled into the recovery room and she couldn't come. But she really tried to stay with me as much as she could to make sure I was being given my pain meds.
You've been provided the optimal service that you deserve. That was one of the things that she was also overseeing, because she was basically going to different doctors and saying, make sure this is going on, this is happening. This is seeing through that you get attended to.
I believe that was an angel, because her demeanor and everything, and the fact that she was advocating for me so much, and I really felt like I had someone in my corner. While I'm still on the operating table, after the doctors have cleared and they've stitched me back up, they do this thing where they push on your abdomen to try and push out blood. They say
blood clots.
They say that they want to make sure that I'm not clotting, so they're trying to push blood so it doesn't clot. Imagine you have a fresh wound and someone comes and pokes that wound. That's what the nurses were. And guess which nurse was in charge of doing that? That's why I told him that I felt like she had a vendetta or something, because even the other nurses in the postpartum recovery room that had changed shift with her, because she was just in the delivery department. I was then wheeled into recovery department, and there were different nurses there. They had to do the same thing she had to do, but they were so much more gentle than she was. And I kept telling her that really hurts. I literally would scream, and all the nurses around would be outside. I'm sure they would like look at each other, like, because I was screaming, I was in that much pain. She would come and press her tight. She was heavy set, and she would put her entire weight on my abdomen in the name of pushing blood out. It was so painful because now my pain meds are not as strong as the ones that I had been administered to me in surgery. So I kept looking at her like, and my mom's on the phone. I'm telling her, at some point my mom heard me screaming because she had to come back every couple of minutes to do that. Every couple of minutes to come and do that. And so I felt like, okay, when am I going to stop being in pain? I was reunited with my son. Before we left the operating room, they put him on my chest. He had been crying so much. I had been hearing him crying so much the entire time. They put him on my chest. I couldn't believe that he was my child because he was so pale, and you guys will see this in the video. It was so pale. As soon as they put him on my chest, then he calmed down. He completely went quiet. As soon as he laid on my chest, he kept quiet completely and started looking at me. And it was the most beautiful thing. At that moment, everything became worth it. Everything I had been through and the pain I was experiencing and would experience became worth it, because I got to see the little blessing, the miracle that had been in me for this long. And honestly, I was just so happy to see him breathing and well and alive, because I feared that he was going to die in me. He was stuck at the entrance, I felt, and what they had to do to get him out, I just didn't know if he would make it. So I looked at him and I knew that he was a miracle. I knew that he was a miracle because, just like you said, the doctors, this was a complicated case for them.
You had to call different doctors from different departments and different surgeons, different specialists for another look at it, for another eye on the matter. So different people had their hands in it.
In the operating room, they had to go and call people, other doctors from other departments. That's how complicated my case was. So anyway, when I got reunited with him and that woman was causing me so much pain, I would scream. I just kept wondering, like, well, why is she like this? Why is she treating me like this? Can't she at least consider the pain I'm in, or wait until I have pain meds? And that's why I say that I don't know what was going on in her mind, but I just obviously wasn't her cup of tea. Anyway, fast forward, we get wheeled to the recovery room. After the nurse who tried to make sure that I was nursing properly, she was really nice too, but she was black. So you held the baby out of the operating room, you brought him, and she asked you to time how much time the baby will be on each boob.
She was also another one really trying to attend to you as long as she can. Seeing that she saw you, that she was definitely follow up on you and making sure that everything was all right with you.
Yeah, at that point I felt taken care of by that nurse as well.
I did feel a little bit more of a warmth with her, compared to any other ones.
And she kept apologizing to me for the pain I was in. They delayed us in transit because I was high risk, and they had to monitor me because of how complicated my situation was.
Yeah, they had to give her blood because she lost so much blood.
Because normally you're supposed to be wheeled right to the recovery room. I spent we spent all day in a transit room by the nurse's workstation because I had to be monitored. Doctors had to keep coming in. I had lost so much blood. And this happened again with my first birth. I lost so much blood with Jaden. They had to give me multiple blood transfusions. And so it was happening all over again. It was happening all over again. And I wouldn't even get to know that that's not the worst of it. While in the operating room, doctor, I believe he was a doctor, he came back to tell me that it was such a task to get the baby out that they injured my bladder. This doctor told me that they injured my bladder and that because of that, I'd have a catheter on me for a while and I would see blood in my catheter for a while. Fast forward to us being wheeled to the recovery room. I continue to be in extreme pain. Extreme pain. At some point in the middle of the night, I cried out to God and I said, God, hear me please, I'm in pain. Hear me, God. And I started praying even in my language. And my husband was just sitting there and he didn't know what to do because he was holding a baby who needed my attention, but I couldn't give him my attention because I was in pain. And I remember trying to ring the nurse so many times, please do something, I'm in pain. And they're like, oh, I've put in a request to the doctor, they're not here, they're not responding. I've put in a request. It took a long time until the nurse took matters into her own hands and decided that she would give me some prescription that she usually advocates for women who've had C-section that helps with the gas pain and the other pain that you feel. And so I think that was my saving grace. I think that was God responding to me because I thought I was going crazy. I was in excruciating pain, and doctors didn't take that seriously apparently. And when this lady gave me the medication she'd been talking about and gave me this milk mixture, I started to feel better. But she did that on her own initiative. I guess she did have the authority to give that. And then I felt a little better.
That was a young nurse, right?
Yes, the very young nurse.
She
came in and she was being very nice. I mean, she nicely told me that I'm sorry, I've done everything I can, but I am waiting on the doctors. I put in the request in the computer and the doctor on call has not responded. Anyway, I have a catheter on me that has blood in it. So I'm draining blood from my bladder. I've been told by the doctor in the surgery room that my bladder was destroyed. Or at least there was a laceration or a slight incision into my bladder that was not intentional because of all the pulling they had to do. They had to do such forceful pulling to pull the baby out of the canal he was lodged in back up here so they could perform surgery. So in the process of that, because the bladder is so close to the uterus, they slightly damaged it. Obviously the nurses encouraged me to walk around and to go and pee. And I couldn't pee for the first day or more. Day and some hours. And I kept telling them that, okay, this is not okay. I cannot pee. That's after they've taken the catheter out. After they take the catheter out, they tell you to try to pee. And I couldn't pee for over a day. I remember crying on the phone with my mom, like, I cannot pee. I'm trying and I feel the pressure and it's adding to my discomfort in addition to my pain. I cannot pee. You know, I believe that God was with me and now Holy Spirit instructed me to place my hand on the outside of my area and put pressure from the outside. Nobody told me anything. I just had a strong urge, something telling me to put my hand on my outside of my area and put pressure on it. And so I sat on the toilet, and you guys, like, when you have C-section, you cannot. It's like you can't. For me, at least, it's like everything hurts 500 times more. Everything's so uncomfortable, and like just taking steps and even squatting to go on the toilet is a lot. And so I put the pressure on there, and lo and behold, a huge blood clot passes out, and then I finally get the relief of peeing. I believe that that was the Holy Spirit who literally told me to do that, because I told the nurse, and this was a different nurse. Mind you, these nurses were rotating shifts every 12 hours. So I would have a night nurse, a day nurse, a different night nurse, a different day nurse, and so on. Normally you would be discharged from C-section after like 2 or 3 days. I ended up being in hospital for 5 days because I suffered complications. They had monitored me so close and keep giving me a certain medication to try to spike my blood levels. I'm forgetting the actual name.
They had to give you blood infusion though.
They had a transfusion. They gave me a blood transfusion, and
about 3?
I'm not sure, but they gave me the first one, and then they said, the doctors kept coming in and saying, we're so concerned because your heart rate is so high, because my body was trying to work overtime to produce blood for my body because I had lost a lot of blood in surgery.
Munchie this, and she's possibly anemic.
I've always been slightly anemic, not concerningly anemic, but just slightly anemic most of my life. The doctors give me a transfusion, they keep coming in, they're monitoring, they're scaring me. They're scaring me because they're telling me that your heart rate is so high and we're failing to get it down because you've lost so much blood and your body is trying to make enough blood for your body. We might have to give you another transfusion. So each doctor that came on a 12-hour shift, they would be told that, oh, she needs a blood transfusion, and then they might decide. Like, I had 3 doctors
to wait it out to see
who said, no, we don't need to give her blood. She'll be okay, we can wait it out. 3 doctors come in and say that I don't need blood. When I had blurry vision, I wouldn't walk straight. I would stagger because I don't have enough blood in my body. But doctors are saying, we're not giving her blood. She doesn't need the blood. Until, no, I would tell my mom this, and she's like, they need to give you blood. They need to give you blood.
Ask if you wanted blood.
They asked me, and I said yes from the jump because I've been here before.
Yeah.
I knew that I needed to get blood, until, by the grace of God, the very last doctor insisted. She put her foot down and said, give this girl blood now. I don't know why you waited 3 days to give her more blood, because she's having blurry vision. She's having all the symptoms that she needs to get transfusion. And she might seem like she's okay because she's managing to walk. But when she gets home, where she has to do stuff. But as I was saying, the last doctor, I remember my mom was just praying and saying, we have to pray so that there's a doctor who can come in and okay your blood transfusion because you need it. I was on all kinds of medication to regulate my heartbeat, some medication that I had to use like a code or a key to open it every couple of hours because it was a narcotic. I was on all kinds of meds, and then they eventually gave me a blood transfusion. That was on the Friday. I delivered our son on Monday. I left and got discharged on Friday. They were actually contemplating keeping me until Saturday, but I was like, my oldest son needs us. Like, I'm not going to keep staying here. I've gotten the blood transfusion. I'll go and heal at home. Fast forward, we go home after 5 days of being in the hospital, and after being denied blood transfusion for like 3 days because doctors kept going back and forth about my health. And even though they knew the catheter, I started regulating my pee. The catheter got removed because I had been told that I might have to take the catheter home with me and be on a catheter for 2 weeks because of the blood, because they can only take off the catheter when only pee is now being collected. If there's still blood in there, if you're still leaking blood from your bladder, that's not good. The last doctor who was explaining, took her time and explained things to me, basically say that they would have had to keep it on so it's not for the pressure. You know, when you have to pee, if you have regular bladder and you have to pee, sometimes pee collects in your bladder, and then when you feel that pressure is when you have to go to the bathroom and pee. And because my bladder was already injured, they didn't want to further injure, open the incision or the stitching they had to do because of the pressure that collects from pee. That's why I would have to have a catheter which constantly drains the pee out of my bladder so my bladder could heal. So mind you, this is a real conversation I'm having with doctors in the hospital during recovery while I'm trying to bond with my baby, trying to breastfeed, which the first day didn't work out because the pain was excruciating. The after pains, the pain you have when you're breastfeeding after delivering is when the uterus is shrinking back into size, and it feels slightly like contractions because your uterus is actually contracting. To me, that was really painful for the first day. We ended up giving him milk formula with a syringe because he was crying and the nurses were saying that's a hunger cry. So he did take formula, right? You gave him the formula with the syringe. Again, that was another part of our plan that didn't work out according to plan. Anyway, I come back home, I'm swollen. Like swollen, my entire body swollen. I look and feel like an elephant at this point. I believe that recovery is such a long way from me, and God came through. Jehovah came through for me because I recovered quicker than I thought I would, at least on the outside and physically, for me to feel like myself again. Of course, I still had more weight because by the time I delivered our baby, I was 183 pounds. I think I had gained quite a bit of weight while pregnant, but not enough to give me gestational diabetes, which was good. The doctors, even though I gained more than the ideal for a pregnant woman my size, they weren't too concerned past my gestational diabetes test. They weren't concerned about my weight gain too much. My postpartum visit. So my very first visit to be seen again after delivering was a very upsetting and shocking visit for me. So I go there, I'm aware that they've damaged my bladder. At least, anyway, that's what's in my mind. So I get there, I see the doctor. He's very sober-minded, like very serious-faced, because he reiterated the seriousness of my situation and the seriousness of my birth and how things almost went south in the process of delivering the baby. And so I'm at this point, I've kind of come to terms with how traumatic my birth was, and I'm thinking, okay, that's okay, we're past it, I'm healing now, we can move on. And so this man decides to sit down. I thank the Lord that he did. I still have his notes up till today because he decided to print them out for me, my surgery notes. He basically drew my uterus and gave me a visual. He gave me a visual of what my uterus looks like. It's basically been trashed. He was torn in all places. And I have stitches all over my uterus, apparently. Then they ended up having to do an incision high top instead of low. Because apparently, because of all the force, they had nurses, by the way, which I may not be a medical doctor or a nurse myself, but I just don't understand why nurses were the ones assigned to push the baby's head back up. So actually not just pulling, but somebody came around the other way to forcefully push the baby's head back up to my abdomen. And it was stated on the report that it was a nurse. That's questionable for me in its own sense. That does a nurse really know what they're doing in that situation, or are they just blindly pushing a baby up a canal that they have no idea is? Mind you, something I forgot to mention is when I was pushing, the intern told me that the baby was taking a different route than the usual route. I don't know what that meant, but basically the baby wasn't taking the normal passage. He did a twist or a turn somewhere. So now a nurse who, I don't know if they're qualified enough to know which direction to take the baby back into, but that's apparently what happened according to my postpartum visit. And he drew my uterus, basically showed me that it was trashed. It was damaged, extremely damaged. He told me that it was so bad that the doctors during surgery considered taking out my They considered taking out my uterus. They considered taking out my uterus. Because they had caused so much damage to it. I sat there and watched the doctor draw my uterus and it looked like trash. It's torn everywhere. Everywhere. And they ended up doing an incision up top instead of low. And the doctor then told me that, as you can see, it's written on the report that we recommend you don't try to be pregnant again. We recommend that you don't try to have any more children.
But if you were, you only be able to have one. And it'll have to be a C-section.
Was reading the report to me, so they put this in the report that they don't recommend I try to have children again. That if I do, at the very most, it can only be one more. And even then, I have a high risk of death and complications because they would have to do a transverse, not just on my uterus, but also on my abdomen. So instead of having an incision horizontally, I'll have it vertically, and that is increased chances of worse bleeding than I suffered. And the baby cannot be carried to full term, and I cannot labor whatsoever. It would have to be a scheduled repeat C-section. I will not be able to labor whatsoever because triggering those muscles that have been torn and stitched, they could possibly explode, and then it could be fatal. So I'm sitting here listening to this doctor basically telling me that the medical personnel in which my life was entrusted did damage to my body that is permanent. As if that wasn't enough, I mentioned that, well, they told me that they also injured my bladder. The doctor reads the report and says, no, they didn't mention that. Actually, they wrote here that the bladder was left intact. And it shows me on the report where it's written that. Am I crazy? In the operating room, a doctor came and told me that they tore my bladder slightly, but they still did. And therefore I would be bleeding for a while. I would need a catheter for a while. A doctor in the operating room came and told me that. And then 2 more doctors in recovery. In those 5 days I was still admitted, confirmed that, when they were explaining things that, well, because your bladder is so close to the uterus, when they were doing all these maneuvering and trying to force the baby up, they caused trauma to your bladder. And that's what's causing it to bleed. To a point where we're considering sending you home with a catheter for 2 weeks. I won't lie and say that, you know, I didn't walk out of that postpartum visit angry, upset, and seriously considering filing a lawsuit. Because here I am walking with a useless uterus based on what I've been told. So that is my reality. That is why my birth was traumatic, because I have a condition I'm now living with that was not what I wanted or planned or ever imagined would be the result. And I don't think that anyone can convince me that my skin color didn't have anything to do with being dismissed in recovery for my pain, not being taken seriously, doctors not getting back to the nurse or whatever was being done, and doctors basically going back and forth on my life about whether or not I needed to get a blood transfusion when I desperately needed it. Up until a heaven-sent, literally heaven-sent doctor, the last doctor who saw me, put her foot down and chased after somebody to make sure that I had another second. I'd already been given 2 pints. They had to give me another 2.
Wasn't that African American?
No, she was white. She was white. But she was older. She was white, but an older doctor. Much older. She put her foot down and she said, I don't understand why all the other doctors didn't immediately order a blood transfusion, because the results came back from the lab and they show that your hemoglobin is extremely low. Extremely low. They told me the number, and they told me the number of a normal person and what is considered normal, and I think I was really low. I don't remember the exact details, but I was really low. So I hope people can empathize and understand why I felt angry, and I also wasn't ready to talk about my birth. I can't even believe that I'm making this video and putting all this out there and being vulnerable. But yes, you know, I hope that also in the future this can encourage people to be more sensitive as well, because obviously there's going to be people who are going to ask me about children. Now, I'm a believer in God, and I believe that God is a miracle worker, because the very birth of my child was a miracle, as you guys heard. And this was the second time around. My first son was a miracle baby as well. So I know that if it's God's will, we will have more children, and He will work it out for our good and for the good of His kingdom. And if it's not, then I have serenity to know that God is in control. His plan is better than mine, and there's a reason, a very good reason why that won't work. but why it won't happen in the future. Nonetheless, I'm blessed. I've at least been able to have 2. There's some women who can't even have 1. But that's my story. That's our story. That's it for this birth story. And we will be putting up the birth vlog, and hopefully after you watch part 1 and part 2, which is this video, you will understand what's going on in the vlog. We weren't able to record everything because that nurse insisted that we could not record the actual birth, but I did my research and discovered that we were allowed to record. Again, another reason why I felt like this nurse had something against me and my husband. I just pray that this video becomes a blessing to somebody. People know that God is real, because only God saved me out of this situation. Nobody else did. Only God saved my life. Only God saved my son's life to come out healthy and fine. At least for what we know, from what we know at this point in life. Only God did that. And only God provided the right people who put their foot down so I may be treated better. But I believe that the reason sin exists, well, the reason why bad things happen and God allows bad things to happen is to continuously show us that sin is real and sin exists, and the sin of racism is real, and the sin of mistreating others is real, and the sin of faking reports is real. The sin of dishonesty is real. Sin is real. But in the midst of all of that, God still worked everything together for my good. For the good of our baby, for the good of my husband, for the good of everyone, and for His glory.
Guys, if you were to go through this traumatic event with your wife, just know that the closer you hold God, the closer you keep God to you, is the more peace will fill you up, and reassurance to know that your wife will be okay. That's one advice I would give to you guys. Bear that in mind, and trying to be as empathetic as you can, and definitely be an advocate for your wife. Stand up for your wife. Research, know the ins and outs, know what drugs they're giving her, and really be attentive to your wife in that procedure room. Because at the end of the day, you're her number one advocate, and especially when nobody else is listening. It's just my little 1-2 cents about it. And if you guys want to learn any more stuff or you have any questions, just comment below and we can get back to you. We'll be more than glad, more than happy to get back to you. You okay?
Yeah.
You did good. You were so strong. That day I really realized how strong you were. Definitely grew a whole new appreciation for you. Childbirth is something.
This is not to get people's pity, or I'm not doing this to get pity. I've known this for almost 5 months now, and I've kept it to myself, with the exception of family, and not even every family member knew about this either. This was all, I believe, obedience to the Lord, to share, be vulnerable, expose sin, but most importantly, glorify God. Because you guys seeing me here, alive and well, only by the hand of God. I was destined, I was going down the road of losing my life, either in the process or in postpartum. I was supposed to lose my life, but God was not done with me yet. neither was he done with our son. So this is all for the glory of God. And I pray that someone is blessed and encouraged. I hope I'm not scaring any expecting mothers or parents. But I do want to be realistic because it is our reality. We live in a world full of sin. To think otherwise is to be foolish. So I want to encourage you to be educated. Educate yourselves on your rights. Be aware, be alert. Ask for documentation, reports, proof. And as my husband said, for the men, especially if your wives are out of it, childbirth can be quite an experience where you can be out of it. Be vigilant. Be the advocate for your wife. Be the birthing partner she needs, and ask questions, make demands. He had to step in. One of the 5 days we were still admitted, when he had taken it up to here with some of the nurses, because he had to take it upon himself to walk me, to do everything the nurses were supposed to do, because he didn't want to deal with the attitude of some of the nurses who were coming in. Eventually said something to one nurse, when we're ringing the bell, we need you to come and help us. He had to step in at some point. He would have to move me, shift me when I needed to be shifted, to do everything that they are supposed to do as the nurses. We've made this video long enough. I pray that somebody has been blessed and encouraged. And I'm not looking for pity. Prayers are always welcome. And like I said, God's will be done at the end of the day. If it's His will to give us more children, He will make a way. We will see you guys in our next video.
Thank you for spending time with us, chatting with us, and hopefully you'll be able to stay tuned for more videos to come. Let's become more interactive in the comment section so we can just start, getting some conversation going. And in the day, we all want to glorify God. We all want to shed the light of Jesus Christ and His goodness and His mercies.
See you guys in the next video. Stay blessed, believe in God, and believe in yourself.
Always.
Bye.
Believe in your spouse. I believed in you, babe. You did that.